I'm Joseph Piper. Stay tuned as we have a conversation with artist Melissa Haviland here at the Elkhorn Valley campus of Metropolitan Community College. She's having a gallery show here, and we're going to talk to her about her work. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. I'm Joseph Piper. Welcome to the studios at Metropolitan Community College at Elkhorn Valley campus. Today I'm going to have a conversation with artist Melissa Haviland. She has a show here at our Gallery of Art and Design, and we're going to talk a little bit about her work and get to know her. So Melissa, thanks so much for joining me today for this. I really appreciate it. Tell us a little bit about your background. You're from the Midwest. You grew up in Illinois, outside of Chicago.
Well, I think the reason that I'm here today and hanging this show is really because I've always made things. And that all comes from my mother being creative, even though she would never call herself that. She sews, she's like, makes a lot of the things in her life, and I just kind of caught on to that. I think primarily because I was had a lot of energy that she needed to somehow contain. So by the time I was 6, I was sewing, and by the time I was, 12, I had already drawn thousands of pictures or something. So they say, you need to put in 10,000 hours to be an expert at something, right? Okay. I feel like I had already done that by the time I was like, oh yeah, I'd like to make stuff for a living, I feel like I already did that.
Did you have brothers and sisters?
I have 2 little sisters, yes.
Okay. Are they close in age to you, or?
They're closer to each other. Okay. So they're 4 and 6 years younger than me. And they always made things too.
Okay.
And we're, we kind of had elaborate play. So I think that all fits into kind of the same creative field or something.
Now you talked about the work in the gallery that for the show is about domesticity. So did your, as a child when you started learning to sew and drawing and that, did it go beyond that into other areas that you might not consider like a domestic kind of chore, like
out of the house or something? Absolutely. I guess I was always, the person that I think mostly it was about gifts. That's primarily like why I think I made things initially, is to give something, which I think is a very feminine thing. I don't know, but in some ways, like it was just like to me like. I could bake them cookies or I could make them something, like it was all kind of wrapped into the same maybe nurturing kind of aspect. So maybe it's still domestic. But I never took art classes until I was deep in high school, so much later.
So in high school you started to really recognize art as other than you had before that, it had been more of just a pastime, or you hadn't taken it as serious maybe, or? Well,
no, it was very, very serious. Like it's what I did in all my spare time.
Okay.
And I was always in theater, so I did that kind of all the time, from like junior high full time on. And I was exposed to a lot of art. I mean, I'm from Chicago, so I was always surrounded by contemporary art or historic art, doesn't matter, but it's always there.
But then in high school, was there a moment or something where something changed a little bit? No, you just were kind of drawn slowly into that formal idea of studying art.
I just started. I don't remember why I started taking art classes.
Was it drawing, painting? What did you have a particular area that really?
I am not someone who likes a brush.
Okay.
I prefer things that are more directly to the hand. So definitely more drawing than painting. I did lots of things at that age. I don't think I really made any decision. I think a real turning point was that I got a scholarship to take a summer class at the School of the Art Institute. I mean, not a summer class, a weekend class. And so I would just go up on my own. I was like 16 and got to take a class.
Did you take a train?
Yeah, I took the metro up there from my house. And it was super liberating to go up to the city by myself as a kid. And then also, it was the first time I did life drawing from a nude model. I got to work with a real professor, all these things that, and I had already, and I didn't know it then, but by the time I got to college for art, I had done a lot of the things that we were learning.
Was that experience at all scary or a little bit frightening?
The making stuff part wasn't, but
But I
sometimes
mean,
like
going
being
to-
in the city.
Yeah, I mean,
Let's
was it
just-
intimidating to be with an art professor at that age and in the art institute? Was that at all, or did you just feel like it was
No.
home? Did you feel like I'm meant to be here?
No, I guess I was very precocious, so
Okay.
I guess I was just greedy, and
So
I
you
just
were just
asked a
like-
million questions.
Yeah, and you were there to have a good time, right?
I didn't really care if my art was the favorite,
yeah.
the favorite in the class. I just wanted to make more stuff and
Okay.
like learn stuff. I
So
don't know.
you didn't see it as a you weren't, what am I trying to say? You weren't at all like, you didn't put it up on a pedestal necessarily and sort of like, revere it anyway. You just kind of wanted to do it and
did it.
Did it,
Yeah.
yeah, okay. So then, did you decide in high school that you were going to pursue a degree in art after?
It was near the end. I only applied to one school out of high school. Only about 50% of the students that went to my high school ended up going to college. So,
Okay.
it was a very different world than it is today. I mean,
How
at my
so?
school, we primarily students go to college.
Okay.
In my region where I teach in Ohio now. And so I went to the school, applied to the school that was like middle of the road when it came to budget, so I
Right.
could pay for it.
Sure.
And I didn't really know what they were good for. I knew they were good for teaching, and that's
Okay.
not what I wanted to do. I didn't want to teach K through 12. I knew that. And then I went to a weekend tour, and I sat down in a room for people interested in the arts.
Mhm.
And there was a woman there. Her name was Betty Kinzer. She's now on their board of trustees. So this was Illinois State University. And I was the only student in there, or possible student. And she got me within a couple words. I mean, it was just like, oh yeah, this is exactly what I want to do. She made it
What were her
sound
words
just like the
that-
perfect thing.
Do you remember what she said?
Not at all. I remember the room. I remember being with her, and I remember just enjoying her company so much. And she was instrumental in getting me through my program too. So she was the advisor for all
She was
undergrads
advisor
in
for
the
the-
School of Art.
Okay.
So
And was that a big school of arts? Was there a lot of students?
there were a lot of students. I didn't know it, but I had chosen a really good school
Okay.
for going to art school. I mean, at least for a public school in Illinois, it was instrumental in making it happen. So. I didn't know it. It was perfect for me.
So you
at
didn't
least.
at that time. You didn't think about the art institute going there at that time.
I realized really early on that I couldn't have thrived in an art school. I looked at the School of the Art Institute and then also Columbia. And Columbia I liked a lot better. I liked the atmosphere. I liked better. But it too was double the cost of Illinois
Right.
State. So I was paying for school primarily by
Sure.
myself. So I had to kind of consider, basically I was running budgets through my head at
Yeah.
that point. And the Art Institute was just a little too lofty for me. It was
Yeah.
a little too elite. I knew I wasn't going to thrive in a situation like that. I've never, I like time to stew. And I didn't really, I thought maybe I'd just be pushed down a little too much in a school like that. It was a great school, but
Sure.
it just wasn't for me.
So let's talk about a little bit about the show that you have up now. Kind of tell us what the concept is or what it's about. It's drawings and performance art, basically, right? And some
And
screen
prints,
printing.
Yep. It's basically 3 separate pieces that have been brought together for this show. So this show is being called Charmed, I'm Sure. So this is the first time that these 3 pieces are being kind of
Shown
exposed together. Yeah. And the newest piece in the show is called A Host of Options, and it is basically a wallpaper created with multiple prints, so little prints that are silkscreen on laser cut paper. So I've been using a laser cutter to cut multiples out of paper. It's a very easy way to produce the multiple, and then I screen print on those. And then those are hung on corsage pins. And really the reaction, that piece in particular is about starting to learn a lot more about the China industry in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been traveling to China factories, so factories that produce porcelain tableware, and seeing how it's made and talking to their marketing distributors and and really just kind of, I come from a factory background.
Your parents were?
Yeah, my dad worked at a ball factory and still does.
What kind of
ball
ball?
Glass. Ball jars,
Oh,
mason
ball
jars.
Yeah, mason jars. Okay.
Yeah. And I have, so I worked a couple summers there.
Sure.
Over my life. And I think part of the reason I'm attracted to printmaking is because of the multiple. So like there's something about the factory and printmaking and,
sure.
that all ties together for me. And so some of that piece is just all about the abundance of that kind of object as a commodity. I have focused in on one very simple object, really, a teacup. But it's so it ends up being so complicated in our world when we start to think about it culturally, and then thinking about it as like how many people make it every day in those different factories, how many hands have touched each one, and it's just be very interesting.
From your study and your travels to see these factories and to look at the China industry or the ceramics industry, what's kind of surprised you about some of that that's in your work, that's become part of your work?
I guess I'm the most surprised that all the research, one of the reasons I focused on China in particular, so looking at porcelain tableware, was to think about issues of class and kind of like start to think about the difference between this porcelain cup and the ball jar that I drank out of as a kid, right? And how different people exposed to different objects can actually grow up differently. So just really thinking about the basics of these objects and their materiality, and then what they stood for. And what I've been really impressed by is that even though these objects are seen in culture as high class, it's really normal people work in the factory that touch them every day and that sell them and
paint them. And
yes, and
add
and
that
it's
little gold rim around.
And they're
them.
just as interested in the objects as I am, but they're in it, so they like to see it through their eyes is really impressive. So to me, it's just like the kind of normalness of these objects has become really nice, and so that's why there's like an abundance of those paper cups on the wall, because they're churned out every day, but they're also like it's also kind of a common thing, like tableware is common. So it's like this, it's become a much like broader conversation about, it's not just about class anymore. So it's been very interesting. There's one of my favorite factories has been closed down for a couple years now, or 5 years, something like that. The Spode factory in the UK. And they still make Spodeware, but they don't make it there. And
where do they make it?
China, Indonesia, wherever they can.
Interesting.
I got to basically meet people that had worked there by being in the region, and like women who
maybe had spent their whole lives
yeah,
working
they just
there
like did that their whole life. They were super good at it. They could like get a line with a brush and, they have perfect technical skill when it comes to that. It's really interesting.
Since this has the demand for the upper level product, the super expensive, is there not a demand for that like there was, say, 50, 100 years ago, or the formal China?
I think.
Because we used to go into Target and buying, throwaway, or IKEA and buying plates.
And it's still China.
Right.
It's just a different grade.
But is that high end product? Is that less in demand than it was, say, 50, 100 years ago?
I would say it is. I've worked with a place too that's called Replacements Limited. It's in Greensboro, North Carolina, and they're a resale distributor of China, so they can like hook you up with a teacup.
Like if you're missing or you drop your whatever, right?
From their statistics, so one of the things that I did through them, so I worked with them for about a year and a half, and I interviewed their staff and worked with basically the statistics that they produced as an organization that sells China.
Okay, and your purpose to do that was for your work?
Absolutely.
To inform what you were doing, okay.
Yeah, so I could like be around people who knew about these objects and could talk about them in a way that I didn't understand yet, So they have like someone who researches every kind of china, and like people who understand more about crystal, or there's an etiquette specialist that works there.
Right.
There's one of the things that's super interesting about like them is their whole job is to sell you the object, right?
Right.
It's truly commercial, and so some of the first stuff I did was just work with their statistics. So my first time there, I got to spend with 25 of their top selling teacups. So basically, a teacup from every pattern of china that's their top seller by dollar amount. So there was a teacup that cost $1,400 on that table, and then there was Spode Christmas tree that cost $20. Two very different objects.
Right. The one that was $1,400. What made it $1,400? The rarity of it?
It's the highest. It's the most expensive china still made today. It's called Floridanica, made by Royal Copenhagen, and it truly is the most beautiful. It's one of the most beautiful objects I've ever touched. It really is. The quality of the porcelain. It's all the hand painting that goes into it. It's all hand painted, of course.
A lot of gold and.
Yes, very gaudy. Yeah.
Very gaudy.
Yeah.
Very Victorian gaudy, like.
I don't really know how it was made first in the 1700s, so it kind of even predates that, in some ways, so it was made first for a duchess or something. And so to have those two objects next to one another is just flabbergasting to me. But lot less people buy that.
Sure.
14 people have bought that.
Right.
Or something, or 300 in the last 30 years from replacements.
Wow.
But, a quarter of a million people buy Spode Christmas tree. And that's not even counting the people who already have a full set at home. That's just the people who wanted a replacement piece.
Yeah, so it kind of tells you a lot about rituals and things like that. So it speaks to a lot of social things.
I think there's a lot in there, and I react to those little kind of, I think I've always made artwork about those kind of little stories about people, and I find those in there.
Now, and maybe you have, but like your show is these drawings and the screen prints, and then you do a performance piece using, is that a particular china you use, or is it just?
Yes. That is Haviland moss rose, and that's the first. Kind of like the first set of china that I purchased the whole set and knew that it would be like somehow incorporated into the work. But it's also the first set that I used it itself within the art. So the china is displayed within the show, and I will perfect my balance or my posture as I balance the different pieces of china on my head.
And you'll break some of those.
Some of them will break.
So what?
I'm really good at balancing china, I have to say.
Do you worry that you're going to run out of this china? No. Okay. You just go to something different.
Well, you can just get more.
You get more of that particular.
Yes.
china.
And so this was a.
So why that particular?
Down. This one is so Haviland china is really the reason I started into all this, and it's a long, it's got an old history. It's a U.S.-based in its roots, it was a U.S. company. Now, the stuff that I buy is now made in, I think, it's probably Indonesia, is my guess. This particular kind, because it's a company that's kind of fractured over the years and divided into sub-companies. So it's still Haviland china. But the reason I chose moss rose is it's the most like pink and floral and basic of the ones that you can kind to get.
Now, you're not related to Haviland.
I don't know, actually.
You don't know. Have you ever, should be on
I've never done the research.
Genealogy or whatever that is on PBS, and
well, maybe they'll give me some china.
Yeah,
I will be doing that research coming up soon, so I plan to do it
That's
next year.
Because it is kind of a rare name, so I mean, not maybe a rare name, but it's a very specific name, so it's quite possible you could
it's possible. I'm not sure what good it'll do me. It did get me into the factory, though, in Limoges, France.
Wow. So you've toured, how many factories of China have you toured?
The ones here in the country is just Lennox and Homer Laughlin. So the two
Are those like the only two left
those are the
in the
two
country?
that do porcelain.
Okay.
And so that's really kind of. I always see myself a little bit as a ceramicist when I start to talk
Well, I
this
was
way,
gonna ask
but I'm
you too,
specifically going after
I think my
porcelain.
next place goes like, none of your work is ceramic work, right? Or at this point it isn't. Do you
No.
foresee that at some point you might? No. Well, why is that, do you think?
I don't know. I think I do see myself as a ceramicist in a lot of ways. Maybe not as much as I see myself as a printmaker, but I do use and manipulate clay.
Right.
But just in a very different way than
Right.
someone who wants to, throw a pot,
Right.
And what's really amazing is it ends up that I can have really great conversations with ceramicists because I truly understand the
What they-
obsession with the material.
Sure.
And I've had to do a lot of research about the material. So one of my favorite sets of conversations are with the graduate students at Ohio University where I teach who are in the ceramics program. And they're always like, did you read this book? And then I'll read it and then it'll change the path of my work. It'll be about the history of ceramics somehow.
Okay. Is that a well-known ceramics program?
It is.
I thought it was.
We're close to, I think we always compete. It changes a lot. I think we're sitting at number 5 right now for graduate programs in the country.
Because that's kind of a rare thing too anymore. So anybody that, I don't know that students go into ceramics or, clay work like maybe they did.
It does not seem rare with me at our school.
Okay. But I don't know that it's maybe as popular as it was 20, 40 years ago maybe or something.
I think it's just changed.
You
So I'm not sure I'd know about exacts on that, but yeah.
So when someone walks into your show, what will they experience? Can you give a little bit of a...
Sure. I'm always bad with directions. On the right-hand side is a wall of framed screen prints that have they look like ornate frames with a section of wallpaper from the wall.
And then that's in a frame.
And they're in frames, so it's ornate images of frames inside frames. And they have pencil drawings on the inside, so that's on the right-hand side. In the center of the room is a line, kind of a dotted line of 3 floor drawings. And that set of pieces is called Pattern of Refinement, and it includes the performance, which I'll walk around a kind of print/drawing that's kind of in the pink range to do that performance. And then it has basically a portrait of Haviland Moss Rose.
Okay.
And then the third one is a piece called Mingled Pattern, which has 4 different sets of Haviland china that are duplicated with screen print on wood.
Okay.
So they're laminated onto wood. So they kind of act like toys or so
Building
people
blocks.
people can sit and kind of interchange the china as they'd
Okay.
like and play with it. And the goal with those pieces is really to bring the table onto the floor. That was my first initial kind of thought. It's like I wanted to do a set of pieces that played with the idea that you'd have your foot on the table all the time. In early etiquette books, like when etiquette started to happen, when people are like, maybe we shouldn't just do anything we want on the table while we eat. It started out by like, don't spit on the table, don't put your feet on the table. It's really basic.
So these are documented things. Don't spit on the table.
The really early stuff is like, it's stuff we kind of, take for granted that we know.
Sure.
And so it's kind of playing on that too, like this idea of like putting your foot on the table.
what
Ha-ha.
etiquette is.
So faux pas, And yeah, I don't know. And then it's the teacups along the
wall.
left side wall.
And those have a little bit of movement to them, right? Because of the nature of how they're
Yeah, they're
attached.
just dangling at the end of a corsage pin. So they breathe as you walk through the space. And that was hopefully, my goal was to make something that was like a living wallpaper.
How long does it take you to make like one of those drawings of the portraits of the teacups?
The drawings themselves don't take very long. They can take anywhere from 2 to 4 hours, maybe less if it's, if I get it the first time through.
Sure.
But the set of screen prints took right around 2.5 years to produce from end to end. So there's 20 prints in the show, and there's an edition of 20 of each. So there's a heavy amount of kind of printing there.
The designs for your screen print, do you use a computer at all in your work?
Some, primarily for the patterns themselves. I have a history of teaching a course at Ohio University that was based in Photoshop when I first began there, and that was like it for me. I just fell in love with it as a tool, and use it primarily to kind of tile and duplicate pattern. And with screen print, it's really kind of easy to do that because I'm only working with black and white. Resolution sometimes matters. It matters in the end, but I can really kind of manipulate things. So,
now the cups are like, so big, and you said each of those is individually screen printed in the shape of the cup. So do you print each one individually? Do you series on one screen, or
each one individually primarily, unless there's like multiple on the screen and they're all the same color, and then I can pull through. Yeah. So.
Okay. So what's your next? What do you want to do next?
What I'm going to make next is what I consider my floppy dining room. It's going to be basically a soft sculpture dining room.
Okay.
It's going to be the full set of furniture made kind of in a quilting fashion.
Okay.
And it'll all be as ornate as possible, all white on white. Very embroidered and sewn.
Three-dimensional. This won't be on the floor.
But based off of, I have a big collection of 2-dimensional to 3-dimensional objects. So basically, 2-dimensional things that can be changed into a 3-dimensional object. So basically, thinking about folding techniques, paper folding and scoring. So it's going to be all based off of paper toys, but be 3-dimensional in the space.
So you wouldn't be able to sit down at the...
You can't sit on it because it'll just fall.
Okay.
But it will hold itself up in some sort of floppy manner.
And
so
then these
that's
will
the
have
next.
Screen prints on them probably, or?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I don't really know.
Okay.
Kind of like a white on white thing. It's with the way this whole thing will be kind of like a...
just about the form.
Yeah,
not about pattern
it'll be
anymore.
very white on white. You'll see pattern, but it'll be embedded inside, kind of.
Okay, texturally, maybe, and relief. So it's kind of like the china before they put all the decoration on it, sort of like the bisqueware or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool. All right, well, I think it's great that you're here, and I'm glad that we got to talk, and thanks so much, and I hope the opening is a great success, and I'm sure the show will be quite enjoyable, and I hope lots of people show up, and hope you'll come back again soon.
Thanks so much for having
You're
me.
welcome. I'm Joseph Piper. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you again next time.